knowledgeable.
Trace,
Go ahead, Ben.
I'll jump in on that one. So to the extent that boroughs, municipalities are an extension of the state of New Jersey, a common theme I've heard over the years is that when you're a town that has waterfront, it's incumbent upon the governing body to acquire waterfront property for the public good. So, you know, we've been given basically a charge by the state of New Jersey to acquire property when we can. Now, so what we're doing today is we're exploring the grant opportunities and the value of the property as a step one. While we're getting close to acquiring it, then we'll start the conversations about what we do with that. And then that will also have an effect upon which grants we seek. So, you know, I think it was back 2010 or so, Mayor Halfacre started the process of acquiring the Robarts property, and I believe the purchase price there was about $1.2 million. By the time we got to the end of the process, rather than going for a Green Acres grant, which is a portion of the grant, we went for a Blue Water Acres grant. The difference between the two is with the Green Acres grant, you can do a fair amount in regards to having recreational facilities on the land and parking and such. When you go for a Blue Water grant, that greatly restricts the borough's ability to do things and develop the land, although you get a substantial amount more money. I think at the end of the day, that $1.2 million property costs the taxpayer a little over $200,000. So as we go through this, there will be funding opportunities, but typically with the state of New Jersey, the more funds you receive, the more control they take of the property. So those will be the decisions that will be charged to the council to make with public input. This particular piece is vitally important, I believe, in so much that it is next to the town dock, which is really one of the pillars of our community, because that's the ferry boat coming in and docking here was a large part, helped create the municipality of Fairhaven. So this is a nice fit. I believe it works well, you know, as opposed to just having a house come up on Grange Avenue and looking to purchase that. Probably not so much public good. But with this piece, I think this is a good piece for us to acquire, you know, on behalf of the public. And, you know, you can get anxious about the money you're spending, but in reality, you have to look at this not on a 1 year, 5 year, or 10 year. You really have to look at this as something that's multi-generational benefit to society.
Perfect. Great. Thank you for the clarification. And that was really it. So it's the intention, it's really just an intention that we look to acquire the type of waterfront property and things like that. Nothing, not a requirement, an intention.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Good question.
You're welcome.
Anybody else like to be heard? All right, let's open it up to the public.
Have a question, just use the raise hand feature and you'll be recognized.
All right.
Yes.
Yes. Tracy Cole.
Go ahead, Trace.
Hi, everyone.
Good
Can
evening.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Hi, Bill. Thanks for joining Fairhaven tonight. I would like to ask you if you would, sort of picking up on what Suzanne was asking about, Councilwoman McCabe, regarding intent and the engagement, community engagement piece. This is something I think we're still perfecting in Fairhaven. And although the ordinance process that Mr. Cannon outlaid really does provide opportunities for the public to speak in a process that is ongoing, there's an initial engagement piece that I would love to see happen. And to me, that looks like maybe 1 or 2 council people along with the borough engineer or another representative, Teresa, perhaps, in engaging in a conversation, perhaps at the site with some members of the immediate neighborhood to just discuss the idea. And the reason that seems important to me is because as Councilwoman McCabe and maybe others were speaking, if you know, we're talking about a grant, we're talking about a lot of money, we're talking about a park and all wonderful things that seem consistent with the goals of the master plan. Is this a passive park? Is this going to be a recreational park? Are we talking about appurtenances of some kind? I just think the immediate neighborhood might want to know what's happening. And if an extra step of engagement were to happen prior to any formal action by this body, I think it would be refreshing and perhaps even would turn a good idea to an even better idea. I just want to offer that as a thought because I think the community development process enjoys the best outcomes when community engagement happens up front. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard.
You're welcome, Tracy. Sean and Cricket. Bailey, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Sean Bailey. I'm a resident pretty close by. I'm on Riverlawn Road, Riverlawn Drive. And just wanted to express thanks for bringing this to the public's attention, number one. I think it's a great idea. The property has been in disrepair for, we haven't been here that long, but certainly since we've been here. And I think the idea of a public space adjacent to the dock could really be good. And I echo some of the prior comments as far as certainly speaking for myself and even some of our neighbors, we love the opportunity to explore options for what that land could be. I love the idea that you guys are already thinking about the difference of the grants and what limitations that may or may not put on us as far as what we as a town can do or borough can do with that space. So generally we're, just wanted to have a voice of support. I think it's great. And where it's possible to engage our neighborhood or even the whole community in what that could be, I look forward to being part of that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Judy. So we step Judy up there, Teresa.
I had to promote her to a panelist, Mayor. She's using an older version of Zoom.
Okay, hi.
Oh, Judy, how are you doing? Good evening.
I just wanted to pick up on something that Teresa said, but first, just a little bit of history from an old timer. I seem to remember when the house was up for sale, I think back when Mrs. Kern was mayor, and a bunch of us were really hopeful they'd buy it then. So I'm very happy to see that all these years later, we're thinking about it now. Teresa, you mentioned something. Did I understand you correctly that this property is in the floodplain?
A portion of it is, Judy. I don't have the survey in front of me, but there is it's a V zone, I believe. Maybe, don't quote me, but maybe the first third of it or so.
Okay, would that have an impact on what's buildable on that lot?
I would, yes, it does impact that to some degree.
Okay.
And it's therefore cheaper than it otherwise would
Okay,
be.
which I would assume would affect the price, hopefully. Anyway, I think this is a great idea and I'm glad the council is looking at it.
Thank you very much, Judy. All right. Anybody else from the public? Seeing none. I'll go back to the council governing body. Anybody else? And having none, I'll have a motion to close the hearing on the Green Acres, NJDEP Green Acres program application. Motion to close.
Motion.
May I have a
Second.
second? Thank you very much. All right. Bill, thank you very much for joining us this evening. You're invited to stay, but your information and advice was well received. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and have a good evening. I'll depart. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Workshop session, the tree appeal from Navasink Fine Home Buildings, 182 Oxford Avenue. This was carried from the prior month. Our forester, Bill Brooks, has revised his letter, and I think we're good. Has everybody had a chance to read it? Any questions? We're all good now? All right, may I have a motion to approve the tree application?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go, 182 Oxford Avenue. Thank you very much. Municipal cannabis regulation, Attorney Cannon.
Yes, Mayor.
Evening, Greg.
Good evening.
I guess we're gonna do a little primer. I guess we have a short time period, or at least a clock ticking on the borough making a decision on how we handle the legalization of cannabis. And I guess you've given us memos before, but I guess we're here to have a conversation this evening. So
Yes, I mean, at your pleasure, I can do a primer. So
please do so.
Okay. So you all received, or forgive me, Councilwoman McCabe, I'm not sure that I sent it out before you were appointed, but everyone else received a memorandum on the what we'll call the new Cannabis Act. The name is much more complicated than it's the Modernization, Regulation, and Legalization Act, but we're going to call it the Cannabis Act for short here. So the referendum last year in November was passed by the voters of New Jersey, and on February 21st, the governor signed legislation legalizing a form of marijuana called cannabis. And so that's the first important thing to remember. There's a difference now legally between the term cannabis and the term marijuana. Marijuana continues to be defined the same under 2C, and it essentially means unregulated cannabis now within the state of New Jersey. So cannabis will be a regulated and legal form of marijuana. It will be sold and delivered in the state beginning in November 2022. And the act, the Cannabis Act, indicates that a municipality within 6 months of the adoption of that act, or 180 days, or also known as August 21st of this year, in about 11 weeks or 9 weeks or so, any municipality can do one of three things in response to the adoption of the act. The first is that the municipality may opt out of the act and indicate that the governing body and the people of the town do not wish to have cannabis businesses operating in the town. The second option is the municipality can allow as many or as few licenses as it desires for each class of cannabis business, and regulate it through its zoning ordinances and other police powers and regulations. The third is that the municipality can choose to do nothing, in which case the state law will control. And I'm going to go through the classes in a minute, but essentially the industrial type uses of cannabis businesses will be automatically permitted uses in the industrial zones of the municipality. And the retail aspects, or the delivery or retail businesses, storefronts, as you might imagine, dispensaries, will be conditional uses in the commercial zones in the town. As an attorney, I have been recommending that the municipalities do one of the first two, and taking decisive action. The reason is if doing nothing is a permissible option here, but permitted use throughout industrial zones and conditional use throughout residential zones without any further guidance, as you all, I'm sure, are assuredly aware, is not typically the way that zoning is specified or otherwise controlled in the town. AKA, the state law will paint a very broad brush as to these businesses in your town. So if you desire to have them in your town, you should put some parameters around where they might be. That's much more specific than, quote, industrial or commercial, as it's stated in the act. And if you don't want them in your town, then you obviously have to take decisive action by August 21st to prohibit them. Now, getting into the specific types of cannabis businesses, there's six.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
We, in the package and in our ordinances 30-5.3, we brought forth an ordinance in 2018 to prohibit recreational dispensaries and so forth. You may get to this, but do we need to do anything because we've already addressed it 3 years ago?
Yes, so the act, which was passed 6 months or under 6 months ago, indicates that any prior ordinances must be reenacted in order to be viable, pursuant to the specific authority that's contained in the act. So as of this date, as of August 20, it basically resets the clock on anything anyone's done. So the ordinances you've passed before the effective date of the Cannabis Act are no longer valid or allowed, or enforceable, I should say.
Okay.
Okay.
So you will have to reenact that zoning prohibition if you desire to.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I
I'm sorry,
believe
go
the idea of that zoning ordinance was to permit a medicinal use,
Correct.
retail use as a permitted use. So I guess we have to reset that. We also have a prohibition of smoking, I guess, pretty much anything in public buildings and in public parks. Does, just feeding off of what you just said, does the act also cause us to reset that, where we have to, repeat the fact that, we can't smoke anything, but now we have to make it more specific?
Yes. So so in the first instance, we're talking about zoning and allowing businesses to operate or not operate, and controlling and regulating them within the town. In the second part, that's the police powers of the act. Just like you can't stroll down River Road drinking an open Budweiser. I've been recommending that towns also pass those sort of same open container, open consumption vice ordinances under their police power. And indeed, the act does allow you under Chapter 40 for the municipality to enact those same prohibitions. So no minors in possession on private or public property that mirrors your alcohol ordinance, no possession or consumption. The act specifically includes public places that's defined in the Indoor Air Act, meaning that would be public parks, things like that, but not necessarily on the streets or sidewalks. And so what I've been recommending is that municipalities update their open consumption or open container ordinances as well to include the consumption of cannabis on the streets and public thoroughfares as well.
Terrific. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions?
Can I make a statement?
Please do.
Okay. So a few years ago, Councilman Marchese and I worked together and unanimously passed the addition to our, I think it was 30-5.3 permitted and prohibited uses unanimously with the council for recreational. And as you pointed out, Mayor, it was silent on medicinal use. So in the circumstance that a drugstore came into town, we don't have one, but if they did, and under the law, they were dispensing medicinal versions of marijuana, that was carved out. I feel pretty good that this represents what the town wanted at the time. This was 3 years ago. I think that the town would probably like to keep this. And so I am in favor of, as Greg Cannon mentioned, we would have to put this back on the books now that the legislation is in place. So I just wanted to let people know, reflect my opinion and of what the town people might want and the direction I would like to go.
Thank you, Chris. And that was very good work that you and Councilman Marchese did back then.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Councilman Koch.
I guess this is directed towards Mr. Cannon. He presented us with 3 choices. The third choice was to take no action. He recommended against, which obviously makes sense. So how do we determine moving forward? Do we just reset the clock and reintroduce the ordinances that we've already created and agreed upon and voted on? Or do we have to start all over again and receive a consensus of the council as to how we're going to move forward with this? I'm not sure, but is everybody in favor of option 1? Is everybody in favor of option 2? How do we go about that?
Well, I'll say this in my discussions with Attorney Cannon. The thought for me would be to allow a medicinal dispensary as a permitted use in our zones. But beyond that, basically draft a very strict ordinance against public consumption, sale, and so on and so forth. This is fairly new. Well, it's very new to society. I think society has to evolve a bit to understand, how this is going to be viewed in the public space. So I think, my thought would be to charge our attorney Cannon to come forth with probably the most restrictive ordinance allowed as far as the way we work in Fairhaven. And then we can always, as things evolve and go forward, we can always make adjustments.
Okay, so I have one more question. When you talk about a dispensary for medicinal uses only, would that be just a standalone storefront that has medicinal distribution of marijuana? Or would it have to be through another party, say a drugstore, a pharmacy, another store that has a pharmacy as part of its services?
So the Cannabis Regulatory Commission is currently writing those rules in terms of the newly enacted legislation. The medical marijuana, or excuse me, it's medical cannabis program in the state will continue to operate the exact same way it does right now. And the act separates the two and defines them so that they're pretty clearly delineated. I did read Allison was kind enough to provide me last week with all of the ordinances that you previously did. And so really, it's really updating the zoning ordinance to reflect the appropriate definitions that are in the new Cannabis Act that segregates it all out. Anyone anywhere really that tells you, unless they're in the CRC's deliberations and their rounds of rulemaking, tells you exactly what this is all going to look like. No one can really do that at this moment. And in fact, one of my complaints as an attorney with this act is that I have to make my clients decide what they want to do before the rules are written by November of 2022. So it's kind of, a little, and that's why I'm telling, I've been recommending taking an action or not, because the third action is very much a blank slate. So, and in terms of majority, I'm looking here tonight for some direction from you guys as to what the majority wants me to write down and update the ordinances that you already did, so that I can get to work and we can make sure it gets over to the planning board and back in time for August 21st.
If I make a comment just as a reaction to hearing the different comments, I think I heard Councilman Rodriguez mentioning medicinal use in the context of a pharmacy. If one was ever to enter Fairhaven, that's a very different scenario than allowing it to be a standalone operation in our town. I think I would have a little bit more difficulty with us allowing for that. So I just wanted to at least put that out, that I would view that as something very different. Also, as far as, the smoking ordinance that we have today, that people are not allowed to smoke in our parks. And I think that should apply across the board. And that's something that is very important to maintain. We have Fairhaven Fields here and other locations. And I think I just wanted to mention that that's another one that is very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to dovetail on what the conversation was a few years ago. We didn't know the definitions. We were trying to get out ahead of all of the referendum and the legislation that was about to come down from the state. I guess it really doesn't matter right now what those previous council members thought. It's only what the people here think today. But we contemplated whether we get involved in drugstores or standalone operations. It sounds like we now have the luxury of soon knowing the definitions and crafting a better, more finely tuned ordinance. And so, Mr. Cannon, do you believe that we'll have enough information with enough time to get what we want, which sounds like, with drugstores, it seems to be fine. It's part of their day-to-day business, but as a standalone operation, it is less appealing to us. Is that something that we can handle under the timeline with some, precision with the definitions that are coming down?
Yes, I mean, so with respect to medical cannabis, there's principally 4 definitions under the act. It's medical cannabis alternative treatment centers, medical cannabis cultivators, medical cannabis dispensaries, which is really what you're referring to, and medical cannabis manufacturers. And so you could opt to allow alternative treatment centers, but not have medical cannabis dispensaries in town, and allows you to break it down a little further than. I mean, I saw the ordinances. It was a little broad brush because you were kind of painting with colors. You didn't know what they were. Here, it's very specific, and so it'll be defined, and you can pull it out. It's really pretty simple if you guys are going with a prohibition kind of standpoint, because if you don't want to prohibit it, you can just take it back out of there if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be extremely restrictive,
Yes, ma'am.
which I think
Yes.
is where we're all headed.
And I think there's something that Greg Cannon, there's a nuance that he had in there. I think everybody should understand is that we're up against the clock to come up with the regulations or how we're going to handle it. But the CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, really is going to be promulgating the rules off into the future. What I can say is one of the members, because I sit on the New Jersey Conference of Mayors Legislative Committee, and we discussed this last Thursday. One of the members that was put on the commission, a gentleman by the name of Sam Delgado, is very, very strong when it comes to municipalities. So the committee is understanding of the wants and needs and concerns of municipalities. So, you know, I think this will be a decent process. We just have to basically, I think, you know, come up with a restrictive ordinances, put them into place, and again, make adjustments as we deem fit going forward.
I also want to point out with respect to this decision that we're discussing, that it will be revisited under the Act in 5 years. So there'll be a 6-month window 5 years from now for all municipalities to reconsider, or they'll be required to either reenact or reconsider their regulations. So I should mention that.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask one question, Mr. Cannon? If
You guys
we
can call me Greg, it's okay.
if we make a determination as to what ordinances we want to put into place, are we, let's say we're very restrictive with respect to cultivating, manufacturing, or several of the classes, and one of the classes we are less restrictive. Within that 5-year period, can we change anything or whatever we vote upon and determine before the date runs? Are we stuck with it and married to it for 5 years?
So that's a very good question. So I have had long discussions amongst Institute of Local Government Attorneys, because no one knows what to expect in this arena. It's brand new. It's a new market opening up. And the legislative intent, and if you read the statute word for word, it very much its intent is to be a ratcheting system, meaning that the municipality can loosen the restrictions going forward during that aforementioned 5-year period that I was talking about. And that's the way the statute appears intended. Now, does it actually say that? It does not. So if you were very restrictive, and then let's say that this cannabis market's going wonderful everywhere in New Jersey and there's no problems, and you guys wanted to reduce the restrictions, I will say that you're allowed to do that. I think the legislation allows you to do that, and every attorney that's doing my job elsewhere believes that we can. However, I can't guarantee you that an objector won't sue and say the statute doesn't actually say that. So, you know, it's a zoning issue. So there's always two sides. There's always three sides to a zoning issue: the borough, the objector, and the applicant. And so this is in that context, it's a little bit of a different animal. But generally speaking, yes, the legislation is written where they're expecting municipalities to be restricted up front and allowing them to open up over time. But I can't guarantee you an objector won't use the absence of that express language to bring some sort of challenge later. But at the end of the day, that's really the applicant's problem, not the borough's anyway. So.
Okay, so then it's fair to say, as long as we take some action and do something with respect to regulating these 6 classes, then we can tweak it within those whatever we vote upon within that 5-year period. Generally,
You can make them less restrictive, but you cannot make them more restrictive. So I'll give you an illustration. That 5-year window example, let's say that municipality allows cannabis businesses now, and it's not going so well. And 5 years from now, they want to prohibit them. Any cannabis business that already exists will be grandfathered in. They will not be able to be eliminated as the ex post facto. So it's a ratcheting system. You can make it less restrictive, but you cannot make it more restrictive during that 5-year period.
Understood. So, right. So if you wanted to be as cautious, proceed as cautiously as possible, you would make it as restrictive as possible, see how things go, and you could always tailor it back. Understood. Okay, thank you very much.
And I will mention that that's what most municipalities that I represent and that I've heard of are doing, what you guys are talking about.
All righty. Thank you, Greg. Any of the council people have any questions? All right. Seeing none, let's move on to public comments on agenda items. We have a motion to open.
Motion.
Mayor, did you want to bring up, you had mentioned Willow Street construction?
Oh, yes, under workshop. I've had conversations with Superintendent McNeil and the outfit that is building the schools. And they had a request to close Willow Street from their easterly property line to Fairhaven Road to allow them to expedite the construction of the pre-K facilities and be using the road for laydown area and material storage. So the idea would be from June 21st, I guess the day after school closes, until late August, early September. The chief of police under his powers would close Willow Street, effectively making a cul-de-sac on the eastern end of Willow, and looking towards aiding the firm in completing the tasks of finishing the school on time. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
And Mayor, just as we discussed, we haven't really met with the chief or borough engineer yet. We do have rec camp that we have to accommodate at McCarter Park, and we also have a Borough Road project on Will Street that may need to relieve us from using that as a staging area for some portion towards the end of August.
And I just spoke with the contract, and they're aware of the projects, the street projects. So working with them will not be a problem on that end. I think the only other accommodation we really have to consider is pick up, drop off, and for the camp.
Because the little guys are there, right? First graders through third graders, the younger kids are there. And we have porta potties there, right?
They haven't arrived yet, but yes, they would have porta potties for that.
And the alternative is
To keep it open and just make it a lot more difficult to get the materials in, and giving the contractors the space they need to keep an effective and efficient process.
And we may miss the school year open for the pre-K.
Pre-K.
I guess I just have a couple of questions how that would function. I'm not sure. We could check with DJ how many children will be dropped off and picked up at McCarter for camp and how that would function. And I guess my other question maybe for Chief would be, if Willow is closed at the property line, I guess that would be where the house is. There would be very limited parking available. And how would emergency vehicles access someone at McCarter Park if that situation were to arise?
Well, like I said, I haven't walked the property exactly where they want to block it yet. I know this is me and the mayor have spoken about it, but we didn't really have a definite concrete plan. But I'm thinking that it would be blocked off, let's say, on the east side, right up to where the school property line is, right? That's what I'm assuming. And then we would make no parking in front of those couple houses, those couple of parking spots, so people could turn around to go down there. At the end of the street, you put a road closed for residents only, hopefully nobody go down there, but they did, they could turn around. Then what I'm imagining is from Fairhaven Road, we could leave it open to maybe, maybe halfway down that spot, maybe not quite in front of the school, where the doors are, so you would still have some access to drop them off on that side. That's how I imagine it, because I'm thinking that, in front of where the construction is, And maybe, 100 feet past that, we could close it, but we could leave it open so you could still get into the one driveway behind the school. And you could still have a few spots there to drop off. That's what I imagine.
So I think what we need to do is have the chief and DJ sit down with the superintendent McNeil and the contractor and come up with the best plan.
Yeah, because the contractor might not need, I don't believe they would need the whole road. I'm imagining from the property line, that house there on the east side to maybe where like the front doors are, somewhere around there.
Yep. That'd probably
And
be
that should
that
give
way.
them plenty of room to stage. That's how I'm imagining. Again, I haven't spoken to the contractor or the superintendent, but I'm sure we could work it out that you could still pull in there and turn around. Obviously, we'd have them cover up those one-way signs, and we'd allow traffic to pull in and pull out.
Terrific.
Is there an opportunity to move the camp? It sounds that that's the best thing to do in the sense of getting this work done is to close, but just for maybe other safety reasons. I know that as all the construction's done, my car gets nails in the tires, and I'm just thinking of the children and optics, right? Is there an opportunity just to move the camp? It's, I believe, if I recall, it's been years, but the camp doesn't go more than maybe 6 weeks or something. So Fairhaven Fields maybe, or across the street from Knollwood, just something different, just to relocate the whole camp and not be concerned of the two mixing.
I actually agree with that. I think my first thought is the noise level might be pretty high. The dust level, it just sounds like once you accelerate construction, I'm not exactly sure at what stage of construction it would be, and it just doesn't sound safe to me. That's one point. So I agree with Councilwoman McCabe's question, if there's an alternative location. The other thing is, if we're stuck with this situation, I wonder if, we need to have and Chief McGovern, you know that better than anybody else. I'm not an expert, but I just wonder the possibility of having people, drop off at Old Place and then have some situation that the kids get walked over to the park, or some way or park at Knights of Columbus and then walk over to the park. Some other alternatives that are clearly marked so parents know what to do, but it just doesn't sound like a good location for the camp right now.
I agree. You even have Nativity Church, maybe.
I've had preliminary discussions with DJ, and no final decision's been made. Obviously, he's coordinating with the Recreation Committee and liaisons to look at what the best options are for that younger summer camp.
Yeah, I haven't spoke to the superintendent or the contractor. Like I said, maybe they don't need that much space, but we're just trying to make them so they can store some stuff there. It's probably safer with the road closed form than it would be normally with it open. Again, depending on how much they need. But I don't think there'll be that much disruption to the actual park itself, Mr. Mayor. I don't think there'll be much disruption. It's just going to be a little bit a hassle to drop off and pick up. But if we can leave, 15 of those spots, I don't even know how many kids are in that camp. But I don't know if it will be that difficult for them to make that happen. Again, I don't know how many kids are there at all.
It depends on how many. Usually there's a lot. I'm not sure about this year, but depends on whether they're biking there or walking there, or if driving into a cul-de-sac and having to turn back and drive back, right? I think that's what we were discussing. That would essentially turn into a cul-de-sac. So you park and then turn and go back. In a narrow road, I don't even think that's a safe option at all. I would suggest the car should not go into that road at all if you're turning that into a cul-de-sac and you have multiple cars arriving at the same time to drop off little kids. I just don't like I'm not against closing the road. I think it's important that school starts on time, but I just don't like the idea of the kids being there at all and the cars coming in and out of a cul-de-sac. I just don't think it's safe.
I agree. And you just don't know what kind of work are they doing there? Is it jackhammers or things like that? That is the just interfering with the overall, enjoyment of the kids with the camp is just another thing to add into the conversation.
Yeah, do children generally ride their bikes there? Like I remember my kids going a few years back. I don't remember whether we picked them up and dropped them off. I'm just asking, sort of positioning the questions maybe for the parents.
Well, if you're neurotic like me, I dropped off. If you're my husband, she rode a bike.
Yeah.
So folks, let's do this. We certainly have a lot of concerns because there are a lot of I'll ask that the chief and I'll certainly join him with Rich Gardella, we'll get together with the superintendent and members of the Board of Education and work out the details. And then, they're looking to do this, I think, just before our next meeting, but I'm sure we'll come up with a good plan along with DJ to keep everybody safe and
Yeah.
keep the camp enjoyable. And I think
Mayor, just one
certainly-
last thought. If we do end up relocating the camp, we clearly would close the road off just to speed up. I think anything the council can do to get these kids into that school on time, if it's something we can help with, then I'm supportive of that. I just wanted to make that very clear. I think everybody here is.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to delay the opening of the school.
Absolutely.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
As liaison to rec, I can tell you there are about 75 children who are registered to go to McCarter Park. These are the younger kids too, so the chances of them, it's starting first grade through third grade. So the chances of them riding their bikes is a lot less than if they were the older kids. So you're going to see a lot more traffic at that site with parents drop off and picking kids up. So I think that needs to be considered as when you get together with the Board of Ed and Superintendent McNeil.
Thank you very much, Betsy. Thank you. And Chris, thank you for, that's what this is a spirit of cooperation to get things done. So we'll get the details worked out. All righty. Let's get on to public comments on agenda items. Motion open.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. And these. Anybody from the public like to be heard on agenda items? Seeing none, motion to close.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Approval of minutes, May 24th, 2021 regular meeting and May 24th, 2021 executive session. May I have a motion to offer?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, roll call, please.
Council members Chris Keefe,
Yes.
Hotch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, old business. Hearing on the 2021 municipal budget. May I have a motion to open?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, here's our hearing on our 2021 municipal budget. We'll go to the council first. Would anybody like to be heard? Okay. Seeing none.
Councilwoman Neff, do you want to just brief a little bit as the current head of the finance committee?
Sure. I'll be happy to just, have Teresa go into any details, and our CFO is here as well, if necessary. But what I wanted to mention is that we really worked hard, and the board really worked hard to make sure that we cut the expenses where we could. Just considering a lot of things that we have coming up for the borough, we have construction coming up for the DPW, for the police station. I think we feel that we've cut as much as we could, but we are, moving forward with the budget as is, the way it was proposed in our prior meeting. We didn't feel the finance committee has met, and did not feel that it warranted any further cuts at this point. And as I mentioned in several meetings before, our plan is to improve our budgeting process in this coming year, and be in a position to look out a little bit further and plan on more of a 2 to 3 year basis, and hopefully be able to better allocate our expenses and better understand what expenses are coming up. But as far as this budget is concerned, I think the finance committee felt pretty good that we really addressed the issues that needed to be addressed, and kept the expenses as low as it was feasible.
Terrific. Thank you.
I just have a quick question for Councilwoman Neff. If I understand the figures for this year, the dollar increase from last year was roughly 5%. Was it about that? You're shaking your head, yes. And I just want to scale back and note that in the year prior, in 2020, the increase was more like 10%. So if we're looking at comparisons on the percentage increase year over year, this year was down in terms of what the increase was as compared to past year.
That's correct. You know, it is still a little bit higher than we might have seen in some prior years, but I think some of it is catching up with maintenance and some other costs. You know, I think it's important for us to make sure that we're keeping the budget as low as we can on a yearly basis, but not to the point that we are letting issues accumulate. And I think, you know, we don't want to go so far down that then you have to overcompensate in a year or two from now. So it's very important. That's why I think it will be important as we look out further to 3 years and we have a better view of what expenses are coming. I think it'll be better not only in terms of maintaining stability, more stability on a year-to-year basis, because we don't want to go 10% and then 5% and then 2%, right? We want to be a little bit more stable if we can, but you have also an understanding that we need to be able to, pay our salaries and pay for maintenance and other ongoing costs, understanding what's coming next so that we're not cutting too much and then have to overcompensate. So that's sort of, just something important to remember. But yes, it's significantly down from last year, and we trimmed this substantially from the original indications, which were quite high. The initial indications for a potential increase in taxes were pretty high. It was hatched down very, very substantially.
I think the first draft of the budget was about a 14.4% increase. So I really want to thank the committee, Lalini, Bob Gasparini, John Peters, for all their hard work and their vision going forward, because even more than cost cutting, what I heard were plans on working with each department to look at their view down the road and start working out 3 and 5 year plans to dovetail their capital wants and needs into the budget in a smooth process. So I really appreciate that look and the consideration. And with that, anybody else like to be heard? Now, do I go to public on this, Allison?
I think I have a comment, if you don't mind.
Yes.
First, thank you, Teresa, for spending so much time going line by line with me. I really appreciate that and getting up to speed. I probably will look to abstain during this. And one, because I'm right, you live this, I haven't. Though Teresa probably feels like I have the other night, spending almost 3 hours with me. But I just want to go into a little bit more questions, and I'll take it offline to Teresa. As you all know, I have a great deal of experience in human resources, and salaries and bonuses and compensation, total rewards is really my wheelhouse a bit. I would like to get further information and take it offline in regards to some of the increase, decrease when it comes to some of the salary that I'm now glancing at, and I apologize, it didn't catch my eye until really now. I don't know if this is new hires. I don't know if there are promotions but just seeing an increase when average increase is probably around most markets, financial, my healthcare industry is probably 3%. If you look at merit increases, 3%, not including promotional. So again, I'm probably going to abstain for this vote, but I just would like to have more information on that as I look at some of these amounts. That's okay.
Yes, that is a large line item. There's many things that the council's considering. So, what we are doing is appropriating the funds. So if we do decide to move forward, that they will be there.
Okay.
And that's the idea behind it. Doesn't mean we will be spending it, but we would like to have it at our disposal in case we do decide to do so.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ben.
I could, Councilwoman McCabe, I can give you a little more color on that as well. I am the liaison for personnel, and Councilwoman Koch works with me. We've been doing that for the past couple of years. There's historically the borough increases have been somewhere in the 1% to 2% range. And after looking at it and considering the importance of retaining value, we have a very small municipality in terms of personnel, and being down a person or losing someone is a big undertaking for the municipality. And so when we were looking at compensations, the time people have spent working in the municipality, the talent that they brought, whether they were part-time, full-time, benefits, all sorts of things. We were looking at what adjustments could be made to retain the valuable staff that we have. And so over the past couple of years, there has been an attention toward that and an effort to address those needs. So if you were to compare the increase over the past couple of years in that line item for compensations, you probably would see a bigger increase than you have historically. But we felt as a council, and I'm fairly certain all of those raises were unanimously voted upon, that they were important to do for our borough functioning, the retention, and then to not lose time, energy, and value when we lose an employee, have to go through the hiring process, the training process. That's a lot of time that our current, retained employees were then diverting to those steps. So I'm sure you can appreciate that with your background.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, so I just wanted to share that.
I wasn't questioning approvals and stuff, but I just really
Sure.
wanted to, I literally looked at this, and then right now I looked at it and I was like, oh, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Yep,
for that.
You're welcome.
Okay,
And I
would say
certainly
that
can
also-
appreciate retaining talent.
I would say it's a little bit of a catching up.
Okay.
Example of a situation that we're catching up a little bit because, maybe we didn't do enough.
Okay.
And then you become uncompetitive. It's very important to make sure that our staff is recognized and paid in a competitive way and in a fair manner. So I think there's a little
Not
bit of catch
questioning
up.
it.
So if you're probably looking at 10 years, you'll probably average out better. But because it's been, I think, mostly in the last year or two, it does look like a big jump.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
All right, thank you. Alice, we open this up to the public, or is it just? Yes,
Can
we
I
do.
make a few comments, Mayor?
Oh, excuse me,
Sorry.
folks. I didn't see yes, so we'll start with Michael. Is Michael?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of reiterate when we introduced this, like Councilwoman McCabe, it seems like the first kind of things that stick out are salaries and those sorts of appropriations. And Councilwoman Keith and Koch explained, our personnel, and I think it's duly warranted. But I think going forward, again, we need to start looking into our shared service agreements. I know the trend in the past was cost savings, but these are the kind of the really huge jumps. When we look at construction office, $30,000, we're at $215,000 with Rumson in a shared service. I think we might need to reconsider all these. The Board of Ed custodial services, we're jumping up almost 10% for somebody who comes in, and I'm not sure, I know they do the borough, they no longer do the police station. We're talking maybe 4 hours, 20 hours a week, and we're spending $30,000 on custodial services. It may be kind of time to reevaluate the philosophy behind shared services and start looking at what we can do in-house. And that's not even getting into our shared services with Middletown financially. We want to start considering if we can bucket all these up and actually hire somebody if there's some potential cost savings there. I think that would be a good direction to go into, to at least explore. And that's just my 2 cents. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody in the council? Betsy, anybody else? No, we're all good.
I just want to echo one thing that Councilwoman Neff said. I have recently joined the Finance Committee. Many of you know I run a corporate bond platform. So this is my area of expertise. So I'm excited to get back to work on the Finance Committee. And we will commence, once the budget's approved, we'll be working on enhancing the review process with various departments, committees, commissions, and boards for the next budget immediately, rather than waiting, another 10 months, which we've done historically. So we're just revamping the approach so that we've got a lot more time with the budget. We had a lot this time around. We're going to have even more for next year. So I'm looking forward to rolling up the sleeves on that topic and getting to work with Councilwoman Neff.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mayor, I just had one point of clarification for the
Yes,
record.
Colleen? Thank
On
you.
our introduced budget, obviously, we had a vacant position on the council. So for the adopted budget, although Councilwoman McCabe is abstaining, her name and her term will be entered before we submit that to the state, and her abstention will be noted.
Thank you. All right, if nobody else from the council wishes to be heard, let's open it up to the public. Would anybody in the public like to be heard on the budget? House Lady 7. Teresa?
She's recognized, Mayor.
Good evening, Ruth. How are you?
Good evening. I am following up on what Councilwoman Christopher Keefe said as far as the cost of administration and things going up. And it was not too long ago that the Asbury Park Press ran a series on administrative costs in the various towns, along with the costs of the police department and like that. And I'll tell you, it seems to me that Fairhaven is paying its staff as handsomely as Middletown, where Fairhaven would fit into one of the little fiefdoms of Middletown. It is completely out of whack for the size of the town, the number of people who live here, and the fact that, frankly, myself, I could probably, on our police department, maybe recognize 3 policemen, 3. And I understand we have many more than that. In the old days, all right, you don't want to hear that again, but I could see Louis DeVito, Rick Towler, people on the police staff walking the streets. You absolutely do not see that anymore. Chief Chandler, there's no more real recognition. Everybody's in their tinted glass cars, sitting at construction sites. And I just think for what we're getting, we're paying too much. Thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome. But in the words of Senator Vin Gopal, Fairhaven is one of the most efficient municipalities in Monmouth County. So I understand the impressions, but he's the one who actually drilled down and got the facts. So, but we thank you for your comments. I don't see anybody else. May I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we're closed. New Business Council Committee reports. I guess we just went through finance. Nothing else to add there. Personnel, Councilwoman Christopher Keefe. Anything?
No updates from the Personnel Committee. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning, Councilwoman Koch.
Our next planning board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow night. The next zoning board meeting will be scheduled for July 8th. There will be no extra zoning board meeting on this Thursday due to a lack of agenda. And in terms of rec, we have about 150 children signed up for our rec and crew camp, and many of the other camps are filled to capacity as well. That's it.
Okay, and then Parks, Recreation, and Communications, we got all that too, right? Super. Police, Fire, OEM, Councilman McHugh. Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I have a few. Starting with police, the PBA president asked me to read a letter of, I guess, support for our animal control services. It says, in light of recent events regarding the Borough of Fairhaven's animal control services, the members of Fairhaven PBA want to express their support for Animal Control Officer Henry Perez. Perez has served the Borough of Fairhaven for many years with professionalism and integrity. He's quick to respond to calls and requests, often goes above and beyond for borough residents. Many residents in town are on first name basis with Henry and take comfort knowing he is protecting pets and wild animals alike. Henry is a respected member of this community, and eliminating his position would be a great disservice to the borough. The members of the Fairhaven PBA asked the governing body to work with their counterparts in the borough of Red Bank to strongly consider the high level of service the borough currently receives from Henry Perez before making any final decisions. Teresa, could you speak to, because I know a lot of this is outside of our control, and Red Bank was considering terminating his position. Do you know if that happened already? Have you been speaking with?
I didn't get
Dr.
official
Steve?
word on that, nor did I read official word on it, only what I've seen in the paper. I did, as the governing body knows, I did give the governing body a heads up several meetings ago in executive session that that Red Bank had informed us that they were considering, giving us notice on our interlocal agreement for animal control due to the fact that they were possibly looking to go in a different direction. But I haven't got any official word from their acting administrator. And I don't believe I saw anything in the paper that they had taken official action at this point.
Okay, and just to clarify, maybe for the public, we are in an interlocal, so would is there a 6-month kind of transition period from date of notice, or would it be effective?
I don't have it in front of me, Mike. I remember reading it. It's not 6 months. I believe it's less than that. I think it's 30 days with that interlocal grant.
Well, our ILSA expired the 30th, December 31st, 2020, and we extended it just this year, so.
For the whole year.
There we have it.
All right, thank you. So, and for fire, some great news, if we haven't heard already, that the fire department has voted to continue with the Fairhaven Firemen's Fair, one of the greatest traditions in our state. I believe it was the longest continuously running fair. I don't know how that record would go nowadays, but so they're trying to catch up. The workup for the fair, normally starts in January, February, and the fire department is working diligently to secure all the necessary licenses, but they will, the plan is to go on essentially as normal as possible, with the exception of the seafood not being available, not for dine-in or takeout, but everything else following the state guidelines regarding capacity, wipe down stations, hand washing stations, all that stuff they're considering. And I'm very happy to share that news with everyone. And somewhat kind of piggybacking off of that, as we are entering out of this emergency period for COVID, this will probably be actually my last announcement of our numbers. We have 2 active cases. The health emergency has ended, or is it a moratorium? Chief, maybe you want to talk about it. But essentially, because we are out of this emergency declaration period, we will no longer be getting numbers weekly or daily, as Chief has been getting and staying up with. So that's it. We're ending with 2 active cases in Fairhaven, and hopefully everyone continues to, be smart, do what you can to prevent the spread. And end of an era, I guess. Chief, would you like to just kind of explain the end of the health emergency and how that worked?
When the governor pulled back restrictions or parts of the health emergency, the state health department's not allowed to share those numbers anymore with us, or the names anymore with us. So, we had those names and numbers daily, and they're not allowed to share that anymore with us ever since he changed it and stuff. So we don't really have the numbers anymore. But like I said, I think Thursday, the last time we got the numbers, and we were down to 2. One was about to come off, but I know there was somebody in Millwood that unfortunately does have, it came back positive. So I'm assuming we're around 2, but it's definitely way down there. Hopefully everybody will, get their shots if they are able to, and get their vaccine and stay safe, and we get that down to 0. But I was really looking forward to the day it came to 0, so I could say that down to 0. But unfortunately, I probably won't be able to, because again, they won't share those numbers with us anymore, or those names.
So close. Last thing that I missed with the fire department, I'd just like to thank them for their annual, this often goes unnoticed, they go around and decorate the graves of former members and of veterans of our military. Every Memorial Day, they just go about to all different cemeteries in the area, from Long Branch to Middletown. They go all around to past members and recognize their former members. And I just want to thank them for their service that often goes unrecognized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman McHugh. Michael, thank you. And then engineering DPW Borough Facilities, Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you. Just want to welcome Councilwoman McCabe to the crew.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm doing a little bit of recruiting here, maybe. My list is long: engineering, DPW, and facilities. So maybe we'll have a conversation offline to talk about
Okay.
getting you involved somewhere in this big chunk of stuff.
Sounds good, thank you.
Bicentennial Hall, we had a extensive conversation last week with the Facilities Committee. There are a lot of considerations when you're dealing with historic status, something on the National Historic Register. So we've, with the mayor and Councilman McHugh, we've done some work with the committee to come up with a couple of different ideas to make sure we protect that status, but also make this space as usable as possible. So we've been making some progress there. The second thing I wanted to report on is that the engineers and architects are working to put the final touches on our planning so we can go, they can bring that to the council and we can go out to bid, which is important, so that we can figure out next steps and keep the progress going on both the Department of Public Works and the Police Department facilities projects. And lastly, I want to turn a little bit of time over to Rich. There is a NJDOT grant process that's in progress. There's a, I believe, a deadline for July 1st. And he's going to give us a bit of information about that. And I will have no other remarks. So once he's done, we'll turn it back to the mayor.
Okay.
All right, good evening,
Rich.
everyone. It's that time of year where we have to submit our NJDOT municipal aid grant. This would be for fiscal year 2022. It's funding through NJDOT, which is the Transportation Trust Fund. Typically, we fall into the category of like roadway preservation, milling and paving, installing curb, sidewalks, aprons, drainage improvements, things of that nature. In the past 3 years, we've received $850,000. So our typical average is about $285,000 a year in the last 3 years. Basically, what I want to talk to you guys about tonight is project selection. Last year, we funded, we went in for 3rd Street Phase 2. And we were successful to get that, but the alternative was Fairhaven Road. Now, Fairhaven Road is a pretty good length, from river to ridge. So from a cost perspective, it would make sense to phase it, phase 1 and 2. DOT actually does look highly upon that because then they feel it's an element of a larger plan. It would also tie into very nicely with the projects that we've recently completed, on 3rd Street, some of the drainage work that we're going to be doing on Park Lane and Laurel and Linden, and obviously all the sidewalk improvements that we've done in that area as well along Fairhaven Road. So what I'm looking at is a phase 1, which would basically be from River Road to McCarter Avenue. That's about half the length. That would be taking care of the curbs and sidewalks on the west side. Many of those sidewalks are original. They're in really bad shape. We would also be looking at some of the drainage. The drainage on Fairhaven Road ultimately ties into 4th Creek. And this is something that's been kind of monitored throughout the years, but we're at a point where we have to do something. We have to improve that infrastructure as it flows towards that creek along that corridor. And we would also be looking at milling and paving that section of roadway, obviously, from River to McCarter. Now, the other street we looked at in the last couple of years was Foreman as well, Foreman Street. So basically from Cedar all the way to Hants. That's about the same distance as the phase 1 for Fairhaven Road would be. But from my engineering perspective, I would recommend the Fairhaven Road piece. New Jersey American just finished a main upgrade. Obviously, we put in the sidewalks as part of that, safe routes to schools. It would kind of tie that whole area in, and then phase 2 would then pick up from the Carter to Ridge, obviously pulling the county into that, the intersection at Ridge. We also talked about always putting in some type of path along the natural area, tying all that stuff. And then there are some drainage considerations that need to be addressed down on that end. So most likely from, like I said, from the cost, phasing Fairhaven Road as 2 projects would make the most sense. And then obviously Foreman Street has always been there as well. So the timing on this is such where the grant is due July 1. It's an electronic submitted grant. It's all done through the computer and everything's uploaded. But we do need a resolution of support, which we would be doing on the meeting of the 28th. So I'm just throwing out those 2 projects. Probably go for 500,000, maybe 600,000. I have to fine tune my cost estimates. And then typically we would get just under 300. So having said that, those are the options.
Rich, may I ask a question on Fairhaven Road?
Yes.
As we would, if we redo those sidewalks, would they be wider, more like the new sidewalks that were built, from Third going all the way to River? Because the sidewalks are heavily used for bikes and walking. I was just wondering if it would be a wider sidewalk. Also, is there any intent eventually to put a sidewalk on the other side of Fairhaven Road?
So the sidewalks that we recently put in the last couple of years, from McCarter Park leading all the way to the pond, those are 5 feet in width. That's obviously an ideal width. The existing ones are 4 feet in width. But there's a lot of residential properties, older properties. We have to check right of way restrictions and lay it out to see if that'll work. But ideally, yes, widen the sidewalks. It is a main thoroughfare for pedestrians and bikes. What area are you looking at for the sidewalks on Fairhaven Road you mentioned?
The other side, because Fairhaven Road only has the sidewalk on one end.
Yeah, so as part of the phase 2, the planning board recently approved that subdivision at the corner of Brookside. There's sidewalk going in there. And then we had looked at doing a stone dust trail. But are you talking about the other side as
I'm
well?
talking about the opposite side of the road. Is there ever going to be a sidewalk on the opposite side of Fairhaven Road? That's the east side, right? The sidewalk is on the west side. Or the plan is to always keep it as just one side. I'm just mentioning, I guess I'm questioning because it's just a very heavily used sidewalk. Kids are biking through all the time and a lot of people walking their dogs.
Yeah, we can look at that option. We're also going to lean heavily on our active transportation plan that spells out, a plan for sidewalks and ped circulation. But right now, my focus is the phase 1, which would take it to McCarter. And then the next phase, we'll have to see how things lay out right away, considerations, things of that nature.
Rich, can I just ask one question?
Yes.
The grant that you're looking at, is separate and apart and different than the Safe Routes to School grant, which is due in October, right?
Yes, this is the DOT, it's the municipal aid portion. Basically, the state allocates $400 million for municipalities to submit for the transportation trust funding, and of which Fairhaven has been very successful in the past, many years. Like I said, we've received $850,000 just in the last 3 years, and it's 100% grant. So.
And these grants can be used anywhere in the municipality for any area that needs paving?
There's different programs. Typically, we apply for what's considered roadway preservation. Definition is primary project purpose is for improving condition of roadway infrastructure, resurfacing, reconstruction, drainage, and then obviously curbs, sidewalks, driveway aprons, and things of that nature would fall into that. But they do look highly upon the more, through streets. Like if we submitted for a cul-de-sac, that it would not be rated very highly at all, and most likely not funded. So it's more of these these busier thoroughfares, like the third streets that we've been successful for, and Hance Road, and we did Willow Street Phase 1 a few years back, those types of projects.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And if I recall, I know we've talked about this in the past, just from paving and streets, roads, curbs, sidewalks, drainage on a greater perspective. We had considered previously doing or retaining, I think it was Rutgers, maybe, I'm not sure if they do it still, but we had talked about having them do some sort of street study to determine the current condition of all roads in town, and then making an analysis of how frequently they needed to be redone based on traffic patterns, usage, volume, things like that. Is that something that you think would be beneficial to you and your team and the governing body in terms of determining what what's the cue to paving specific roads around town? Because, I think that the grant application process is really important, but sometimes I feel that there's no sense of what other areas in town are in need of paving, or, will be at any certain point in time, speaking, and this kind of ties into the finance committee's initiatives of having that plan in place long-term. And I know that this is something that you have and work on from time to time. I'm just curious if that's an initiative we would want to talk about or think about. And
well, yeah, that was something we looked at. There was a professor up at Rutgers that offered that type of service for a fee. My understanding is he actually retired, so the program has somewhat been suspended. But having said that, Teresa and I are going to be working towards finalizing our 5-year capital program. And I think this year we're going to be rolling out a more thorough, in-depth list of projects where I've broken them up into, for example, streets that would typically fall under a road program, milling, paving, resurfacing, some sidewalk improvements, etc. And then other streets need some ADA improvements, or even new sidewalk for that matter. Then there's other areas of town that need drainage improvements. Some of our outfalls are in need of repair, as the pipe discharges into the river. And then we also have a list of miscellaneous type projects. So I've been developing cost estimates for all these different areas, sites, and that's something that we're going to be looking at, working with my my liaisons, and hopefully presenting to the governing body at some point to have a better understanding of, all right, this is our 5-year queue, and these are our priorities. And then obviously we do maintain lists on, what streets are, like, if we had a harsh winter, potholes, things like that, where what can we do to make more permanent repairs than just Band-Aids. So.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Rich?
And we're going to need some direction because we need to put that resolution on the next agenda. So are we good with the Fairhaven Road Phase 1?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is, we did brief on this. Rich briefed on this extensively for probably well over an hour, a number of meetings back, and we chose 3rd Street, and that was our priority, and we're moving forward with that. And so this was the next thing. I just want to refresh people's memory. I don't know that everybody remembers everything all the time, but this was the next one up on the list. So I just wanted to make a point of that. I think that obviously Ridge and River are county roads, and they will, River's next for the county. And then as far as Third Street was is a main thoroughfare specifically for our kids as much as for our adult drivers and so forth. So, Fairhaven Road is in need, and I fully support what Rich is putting forward here.
Terrific. Okay, so with the consensus of council, we'll put in the grant in for Fairhaven Road Phase 1 reconstruction. Is the council good with that?
Yes.
I see all heads going up and down. Okay. So Rich, you have your marching orders. Get to work on that. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is that the east side or the west side of Fairhaven Road? I missed that. I'm sorry, the north side or the south side?
It's the north end. It would be from River Road to McCarter.
Okay, and then phase 2 would fall in the other end.
Heading
direction.
south. Yep.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. It's good to be clear. All right. So that ends new business. We're going to go to the consent agenda. What I'll do is this, I'll pull out, let's vote on 2021.
155.
Approve of the adoption of the municipal budget 2021-155. May I have a motion to offer?
Motion.
Mayor,
Yes.
can you repeat that, please?
Okay, so I'm pulling out of the consent agenda 2021-155, approve adoption of the 2021 municipal budget.
Okay.
Okay, so
We'll
this
vote
just-
on that separately.
We're voting on that first separately, yes? So may I have a motion?
Motion.
May I have a
Second.
second? I have a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Allison, roll call, please.
Council members Krishner Keefe,
Yes.
Koch.
I would just like to make a statement and thank the Finance Committee for all of their hard work. I know that when you prepare a budget like that, it takes a tremendous amount of effort and many, many hours. But I'm going to vote no on behalf of all the hardworking families in Fairhaven. As I mentioned last council meeting, I felt there were areas where we could have trimmed the budget and provided some relief for our residents. That didn't happen. So as a result, my vote is no.
Thank you, Betsy.
McCabe,
Abstain, please.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes. Can I have you?
Here you go. The motion passes. Thank you all. For the remaining consent agenda resolutions, 2021-153 to 2021-163. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any other questions or statements? Seeing none, Allison, roll call, please.
Council members Krishner Keefe,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McCabe,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, great. Department reports, the municipal clerk, dog license, tax collector, municipal court, then the budget status. Motion to accept is submitted.
Motion.
Second.
And I have a second. Thank you very much. Now we go to the borough. May I have a motion open?
Motion.
Second.
Let's see, we have any participants?
Carolyn or Paul Ferguson? Go
Good
ahead,
evening.
Carolyn or Paul.
Hi, it's Carolyn.
Good evening, Carolyn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful.
Good. I'd just like to comment on the Fairhaven Road curbing. As you know, I'm the chair of the Fairhaven Fields Natural Area Committee. And I just would like to share that the committee is eager to see curbing placed on the west side of Fairhaven Road. So we will appreciate if that, that we appreciate the selection you made about the next project. What happens is that the water comes down Buttonwood Drive into the natural area, and it goes right into that pine forest area with the trails. And there's been a lot of erosion there. And if you walk on that trail through the pine area, you will see that the roots are quite exposed. I think they've been sprayed with orange paint, but it has become kind of a tripping hazard. And we do believe that curbing and redirecting the water into the storm drains will really help the situation. And that's it.
Thank you very much for that observation. We'll make sure that gets to Engineer Gardella. Anybody else?
I have something for the good
Yes,
of the
Betsy.
borough. First of all, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection recognizes and conducts a New Jersey big tree hunt every year. And one of our residents, Wendy Murphy, recognized the tree at the Robards Park on De Normandy. She submitted an application and completed all the necessary process for the processing the paperwork. As a result, we have a very large tulip tree on the eastern boundary of the De Normandy Park. The Forestry Service came down and selected that tree to be included in the registry. They also recognize it as being a minimum of 150 years old. The second, for the good of the borough, I'd like to recognize our superintendent of schools, Sean McNeil, who was selected and recognized as Superintendent of the Year for Monmouth County. So I think that's a great honor for him. And thirdly, I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the Memorial Day parade and came out. It was wonderful to see so many people attend and participate and recognize our veterans.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if there's nothing else, on the good of the borough. Oh, Marty Egger. Marty, good evening.
Go ahead, Marty.
Got it. Okay. I know we didn't discuss Hansard Road Phase 2 tonight, but I was wondering, Rich, maybe you can help, or Teresa, with timing on that project. It was a little confusing to me when I thought about what was spoken about the last time. And I know that, we have a lot of residents that are concerned over here. So I've had some questions from people. I just didn't know what to tell them in terms of where it is in the process and what the timing is and what you expect to happen when, and, when the public can, give you some thoughts on how the neighborhood feels.
I thought, Marty, on that one, I thought we were going to have a meeting with Councilman McHugh and Gardella. And
Yeah, I can give a brief update. That was a fiscal year 2020 selection, DOT municipal aid. From a timing perspective, we have to have it awarded by November of this year. We authorized our surveyor to go out and obtain all the survey data and then create the base map. They are currently doing that. We should hopefully have mapping, I would think by the end of this month. So once we get the mapping, we'll overlay, typically we lay in the design for that roadway, which would be, the second phase of Hans, and then including Cooney Terrace. And then obviously also tying it in with the Pocket Park projects at the terminus of Hanson Grange. So until we get that map, it'll be put in the queue once we get that, and then we'll proceed from there.
Okay. If I can just respond to Mayor Lucarelli's question. No, the meeting never occurred. And as I thought about it, Rich, unless I'm putting words in your mouth, please correct me. I think that you said, or Teresa may have said, that you were awaiting this work, the base maps and everything to be done before we meet. But I'm wondering whether or not it really makes any difference from the neighborhood's perspective.
Well, one of the reasons we want the base mapping is we need to lay out and define the location of the property lines.
Oh, okay.
So then, the roadway, as you know, is not a continuous width in that section.
Right.
So once it gets surveyed, the edge of pavement is identified on that map, as well as the property corners are located, the property lines are drawn in. All the other stuff that's out there, the fences, the mailboxes, any, planting beds and trees and things of that nature all get drawn on that base map. So the conversation I think would be better fit is if we have that data and that map, and then we know what our options are. You know, we can come up with option A, B, and C, or whatever that may be. But then we also have to be conscious of, this is a DOT grant, and the scope of work was defined through that process, and the grant was funded based on a scope of work. So, you know, we reached out to the surveyor last week. We should have the base maps, you know, very soon. That's what we were told.
Okay, very soon. So perhaps the first or second meeting in July, we'll have something that we can look at, grade over, and make a decision. Would that
All
be
right.
fair?
So one question for Rich, I just want to follow up a little bit. When we talk about access to the parks, is the only option sidewalks, or are there other things like using, you know, cordoning off a section of the roadway as a bicycle and pedestrian lane that permits for that walking, safe walking and riding?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look at the alternative means for linkages of those parks and providing, you know, a safe access, and also an accessible route. But also more importantly, you know, being that they're two separate projects that will be bid separately, we have to make sure that they tie in together appropriately, where there's, you know, the overlap is such where you've got a nice finished product when you're done. The last thing you want to do is do one project and then have to undo something because this other project is coming. And, you know, we look at it from 10,000 feet and we make sure everything fits together as one.
Thank you.
Okay,
Rich,
so
can I ask a clarifying question? The
Mark-
grant that you spoke to, I'm sorry if I just spoke over somebody.
No, that's Susan. Okay, yes. Yes,
I
Susan.
apologize.
Suzanne, excuse me.
No worries. The grant that you just spoke of, does that grant have to marry up to this Pocket Park project, if I'm using the right terminology here? Or can that grant be used? And I thought maybe Councilwoman O'Keefe asked a question if they're transferable to maybe another usage in town for something similar, but
No, the municipal aid, the NJDOT municipal aid projects are specific to a roadway or project, a defined project. We would actually have to forfeit the grant. And the transferring of funds to another location is not permitted.
okay, thank you.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that historically we've been able to get extensions on these grants. But I think that has changed down in Trenton. So if we don't hit the November date, we could also lose the funds. So we must keep an eye on the clock on this one.
I ask,
Yes,
sorry, Mayor.
Mike McHugh, yes.
All right, thank you. To just follow up on, I believe it was Councilman Rodriguez's question. Rich, are we tied to sidewalks or so background? Tracy Cole shared some interesting alternatives. Also, Green Team, we just got we went through some grant process and I submitted application. We got gold status. We're I think one of only 6 municipalities this year to be awarded gold status for safe routes to school, which I think is awesome. And having digging into some of the sustainable New Jersey, doing some research about like complete and green streets, just some other options that we can consider. I just want to clarify, are we allowed to consider other options, or are we stuck or married to sidewalks?
We could look at other options. You know, the grant process through NJDOT is somewhat old fashioned where, you know, you're checking boxes in the grant. Do curbs exist on both sides? Do sidewalks exist on both sides? You know, you answer yes, no, whatever. And then as part of the proposal, will sidewalks be provided on one side, both sides, etc. In this case, we had looked at putting them in on one side to continue the improvements, which is Hance Road Phase 2. Once again, it's a grant, it's an early on concept plan that we take a look at, and we submit a grant based on, a proposed project. Until we get survey, we have a hard line of where those property lines are. We have to look at that. So, but yeah, there are alternative methods and means to achieve some of that. But we also have to be conscious, we are a complete streets municipality. We endorsed that several years ago. And as a result, we have to be conscious of not only the vehicle, but pedestrian and bicycle, and then obviously ADA accessibility. So, as a licensed engineer, I have to fulfill those obligations when designing or redesigning a street. So, I have to certify that design and submit it to the state, and sign and seal those drawings. So all those considerations have to be looked at. So anyway, I think the best bet for now is let's get the base maps. We can, Nick and I from my office, we could start laying in some stuff, whether it's sketching or through AutoCAD, and look at those options. Absolutely. And then, Mike, we can coordinate that through you and the other liaisons and Teresa.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to double check that it wouldn't like nullify the grant or anything like that. If we do, keep our options open, essentially, like you were saying, just to determine what the width of our options could potentially be. Thanks for clarifying.
And I'm sorry, just to ask a question, I'm assuming if we lose the grant, we are not moving forward with that project, right? Because I don't think the town should pay for the full amount. So I'm assuming we would say, lay that aside and that project would be pushed out a few years. Is that a correct interpretation?
Well, the process is such where, we have an agreement with DOT for the project. Prior to bidding the project, we have to submit drawings and specifications to the state. Their engineers review everything in accordance with the grant agreement and, the original scope of work, and they provide comments. And anytime I haven't really had experiences where we've actually eliminated stuff from a project. Like if we were looking to do sidewalk and now we're not doing sidewalk. It's more where, say, we get into a project and we were going to add an additional scope, maybe drainage or something that may have not been part of that grant. They would outline those as not participating state items. So once again, there's a process, and I don't know if that answers your question, but that, they are looking at these.
No, I think kind of, but I guess my point is that if for some reason there is a substantial enough change to what we intend to do there, that the grant is lost, I would like to see the whole project back for consideration for the council, because I don't think that we should just go ahead without the grant and pay for it out of the town's pocket. I would like to see the project deferred to another time and reconsidered, in a different format. That's all I'm saying. I'm hoping that that's what would happen. That we're not tied to having to do the project without the grant and have to fund it. I would have a real trouble if that was the case.
The other thing to consider is.
You just need someone to mute their phone, please. I
Yeah.
don't know if everyone's getting that background noise.
Mhm.
I don't know who that is.
Teresa, can you mute Miss Egger's phone, please? I think we're getting background noise from there. I don't know if you have the ability. Thank you, Miss Egger.
The only thing I was going to add was, for 19, 20, and 21, Hance Road and Cooney was funded for 2020, and that was the largest of the three grants. It was $350,000. And, one of the reasons that is because it's a phase 2 of a prior project. It's a continuation of the similar efforts that we put forth, on that first phase of Hance Road.
Mhm.
I'm sure in the grant, I probably even wrote in the narrative linking, the future Pocket Park projects, the waterfront access, you know, the fact that Hance Road and that surrounding area is, I hate to use the word thoroughfare, but is a street that does feed in and out of that neighborhood, not only for vehicles, but also for those walking and biking to school. So they look at all of that and rate those projects as such. So I'm sorry, Teresa.
And
what'd you?
I just want to point out that when the borough passed the bond authorization for this project, it included the $350,000 grant as part of that authorization. We would not be able to award the project or the bid without passing another bond authorization if you weren't going to include the grant, $350,000 in grant funding for the project.
Mhm. So look, we're getting pretty far afield on the subject. I think the best thing to do is to get the base maps, lay in the design, put it up for discussion and deliberation, and go from there. I see TC has her hand up.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Hi. I really appreciate the conversation on this project, and want to just add that there's a great many people who share the same feeling that Marty described, very gently as concern. I think the word opposition might be appropriate. And while everyone is in favor of pedestrian safety, and I know that that is the goal, I know that that is the intent of the grant application and Rich's position about making sure that we have safe access for everyone from around everywhere from Fairhaven to any pocket park or otherwise. And I would just offer that there's more than one way to pedestrianize a street. And with that in mind, I'll ask, we don't need a map, by the way, to have a conversation. To engage with the neighborhood on the topic of how best to pedestrianize the street doesn't require surveyors or base maps and engineers. You know, honestly, Rich, I think it'd be really great if we could meet and have a conversation. And I know that the neighborhood has expressed that. I still would assert there's no need for a map to have the conversation. And if you would like, we can meet at any time. And if you do intend to wait till these maps are done, my question is, when can we meet?
Well, I'll say this. Look, we understand that there's opposition, you know, to the sidewalks. And you know, and that's understandable. And there are different ways to allow pedestrian access, but we are now tied to a grant. So I think we should see the design through, have the design put up and debated, because if we do not execute the design, we must then relinquish the grant.
That's
Okay?
understood.
Okay,
Yes.
so I think, you know, although I respect your opinion, I disagree with your assertion. I think the council's time would be best spent, you know, when we have all the information on the table, we can hear the input from the residents and understand their opposition, because this will be a change, you know, to a very bucolic, you know, vista as you walk through the, you know, the shaded street. But, you know, there's a lot of other components that we need to consider here, some of them being financial. So let's get all the information we can, put it onto the table, and then we can bring it forth. And that way we understand the ramifications and implications of the decision that the council will make.
Just to clarify, Mayor, are you proposing a separate public hearing on this project?
I think not a separate public hearing, but certainly during a council meeting, first, second meeting of July, is to put everything up. You know, hopefully this is the last meeting we will have via Zoom, and our next meeting will be in council chambers, and to have a public, you know, meeting about it to discuss it. You know, look, if there's opposition to sidewalks, fine. We do need, I think, it's incumbent upon us to find a way to create a safe pedestrian access down to the pocket park. Okay, the question is, does that violate the terms of our grant? If it does, do we still go ahead, as Councilwoman Neff put it? There's many things here to consider. And in order to do that properly, I think we should have all the information put on the table. All right?
I can appreciate that. Can we have a site meeting in the neighborhood in advance of the July meeting that you're talking about?
I think having several council members, as long as we don't violate the open public meetings rules, to go down there and walk with some residents, I think, and the engineer and the maps, I think would be an excellent idea.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
just to dovetail on that, I've had conversations with Nancy Freeman, and I actually just have been going back and forth about scheduling phone calls and meetings over email. Like the mayor said, we have to be careful not to violate the Sunshine Act, but I do think it's worthwhile walking the area. And Councilwoman McCabe, I know, lives in the area, just adjacent to Hance. And so, you know, she'll be helpful in that corralling folks and organizing, and I'm sure we'll get to the right place. We want to maintain our shoreline. It costs a lot to do that. The state's chipping in, and then just figuring out the right approach to maintaining that, you know, financial support, which is significant from the state, is something we'll want to balance and make sure that we still maintain the character of that street, and also stay true to our, you know, our master plan and our pedestrian plan as well. So I do think we'll get there.
Thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. Thank you for that. And please note me that I'm happy to take a lead on this or to contribute in any factor. Just for comment, as I sit and I've listened to my first meeting and contribute, and thank you for just entertaining my questions. I recognize the importance of grants, and I recognize the restrictions and the requirements and so forth. What my ear has gone to a couple times, and again, learning phase, right, is I just want to ensure that we're not making decisions based on receiving grants. Yes, it's lovely, right, getting money, but we have to do things with that money that may not be for the best interest of our community. And I just had to say that. I just want to put it out there, just not to want to drive decisions based on grants. And I'm going to be, you know, just thoughtful as I think of, you know, different approaches and responses. So, and thank you for all of your hard work for everything that you've done up to this point. Appreciate it.
You know, I do want to point out there that the, you know, NJDOT did not approach the borough for this grant. We submitted to the borough, and like we did tonight when we talked about submitting a grant for, you know, funding, it was several years ago when the project was actually green lighted to submit to NJDOT for the application process.
I was just going to comment. I know that we're going on and on about this subject. I'm completely open to hearing from the community. I think the only thing that I would mention is that it's very important that we consider the entire town and what the needs are. I'm not going to be in that meeting on Hance Road, but I think it's very important that the entire community and the needs of the entire community be considered. I think other some counterpoints is that, you know, if there are any other safe ways to get to the pocket party, I really like to know what they are, and they really need to be safe. The other thing I would mention is that, you know, sometimes we are afraid of sidewalks, but actually studies have shown that sidewalks make neighborhoods more friendly. People tend to walk more, people tend to go about more, and it actually creates more of a community. So there are different arguments. I'm not arguing in favor or against. It's whatever is going to be decided is whatever is going to be decided. But actually, there's a reason why we are a community that is building sidewalks and improving our sidewalks, because they actually create connection, community connection in a positive way. So I just also wanted to add that as a consideration.
Thank you,
I think it's also important to say, Rich and I have been doing this a long time, and generally speaking, when we propose sidewalks along any road, there's often resistance on the road itself or the homeowners itself. But after the project's done, and I can rattle off project after project, the residents generally find it, they like it a lot. It's the idea change at first could be scary, but to Councilwoman Neff's point, the connectivity, the safe route to schools, the transportation plan, all the pieces we put together to make this happen and to put that connectivity in, ultimately is very well received by the community at large and even by the residents that are affected by the projects.
There we go. All right. We've had TC, so let's go to House Lady. Ruth?
Go ahead, Rude. You can unmute yourself.
Okay. Two things on a totally different subject. Number one, our former financial assistant in Borough Hall had her credentials and her education upgraded, paid for by the borough, including tolls and gas to go to classes to enhance her education, to perform for the people of Fairhaven. And after this, just recently, she left for another opportunity. I would like to propose that the borough not pay for the education of our employees unless the outcome is specifically used for Fairhaven, for a Fairhaven specific issue. I just don't feel it is fair to the residents of Fairhaven to have to pay, because you know, our employees are paid rather handsomely. I think they can afford to pay for classes and things like that on their own. But if it's specifically for something that applies to Fairhaven, okay. My second subject is every meeting we have ordinances. We are ordinanced to death. I would appreciate it if the council would somehow make a list or go through the ordinances with a fine-tooth comb and see which are needed now and make our rules and regulations as simple and straightforward for everybody to understand as possible. So that, you know, you might want to do that. You might want to just take the ordinances and not with this company who managed to lose parts of the last one. I mean, the actual feet on the ground, council members, people who affect us by passing these ordinances, and get it done. Thank you.
Just have to correct, this codification company hasn't lost any of our ordinances. It was prior from 2002. So.
Yes, that's a horrible piece of misinformation out there. No ordinances mysteriously disappeared, were taken out, or done so either nefariously or through neglect. Thank you, Ruth. TC, Tracy.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think we all want the same thing. I think we want safe streets and safe access to all our destinations in the borough. And I completely and wholeheartedly agree with Councilwoman Neff's points about taking in the entire community. And I think all of that can be achieved with the right design and engineering solution. And I truly also believe that if the members of the governing body and the members of the neighborhood and immediately adjacent to these proposed improvements talk, it will become evident what those right design and engineering solutions are. And my last comment would be to check page 60 of the active transportation plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Motion to close. Go to the borough.
Motion.
Second. All right. That's it for this evening. Thank you all. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Good night,
wonderful
everybody.
evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Happy Flag Day.